Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals. Ozcast.
Yeah, here is part B with Guy, Bluey, McKenna, Drew Jones and myself, Daniel Garb. Plenty more great stories coming your way. And then we're going to get into some detailed chat as well about the Eagles trades, who they might be looking at. Plenty of options. Zac Langdon, Patrick Cripps, Jordan Clark from Geelong is another one. So we're going to look at him in great detail as well, and also discuss the next captain of the West Coast Eagles once Luke Shuey decides that his time is up in the top playing job at the club. So plenty of interesting analysis to come and plenty more fun with Guy McKenna. Here is part B of our chat with him on The Nest. The flag after 94, but finals campaigns in every single year up until 2000, Bluey. So you become captain in 99. Worsfold retires 98, and then you become captain 99. And one of the most infamous moments, I think is probably the best way to describe it, in Eagles history happens in 99, which Scott Cummings was at pains to talk about last week when he was on, and that is the head count at the Wacker against St Kilda. So what's going through your head at the time, and how often do people remind you of that?
Now, I don't know what Scotty said. So the first thing I'll say, I couldn't, when I did the head count, I didn't believe there was two blokes hiding behind Scotty because he was that big. Well, I actually thought it was earlier. Someone, I think I was on the front bar or something the other day, and they were talking about it, and they put the score up. It was actually late in the game. But we're getting belted. I knew we were getting belted. And my recollections was that I've looked around and, as defender and captain, you always be checking I always say check your mirrors. So, I've looked around and there was sort of 5 defenders on 5 forwards behind me, and I'm obviously on my fella, but there was a loose bloke behind me, a St Kilda loose bloke. So I'm going, what? There's 7 forwards here for St Kilda. And our ball was up in our forward line. And I'm thinking, well, if you're a St Kilda person, if you're going to be loose, you'd be loose up around the ball. You wouldn't be loose in their forward line. And so I've had a quick look at the bench, and I forget the numbers, but if there was supposed to be 3 on the bench or 2 on the bench, there was obviously 1 missing. And there was this, the plastic chairs at the Wacker, because we're playing at the Wacker, and the plastic chairs were, stand out. And there was one that was empty. I'm thinking, well, hang on. And so I've looked around, and I'm quickly doing a head count because I'm thinking, well, if this happens, we're a chance. We're going to get some. We're going to get some law and order into this game. And so I said to the umpire, I said, hey, I reckon these blokes, almost pushing it on him to a degree to say, I reckon they've got an extra man on the ground. He said, well, do you want to call a head count? I said, well, I'm trying to count, but there's a loose bloke here. How can you understand that? And the ball's up in our forward end. There's a couple of repeat stoppages. And I've had a look at the bench again. There's still 1 empty plastic white chair. And, if there was maybe 4, if there was 4 on the bench, there's still only 3 St Kilda blokes sitting on the bench. Anyway, he asked me again, do you want to call a head count? And I said, well, I reckon I'm going to have to. He said, well, are you sure, Bluey? I said, yeah, call a head count. So, okay, he's blown the whistle in. The ball's up our forward line, mind you, which explains the story about Mick afterwards too, why he never spoke to me for about 2 days afterwards. Anyway, so we've come in, and sure enough, we head count and counted up, and there's 18. Are you happy with that, Bluey? Okay, just back to your positions and off we go. And then, everyone's having a go at me. And as it turns out, I was right to a degree that, no, there wasn't. There was still 18 on 18, but one of the fellas had gone off, had a leak. And obviously one of the St Kilda blokes had been put on the ground. He thought that was the back line and not the forward line, so he'd come down the wrong end. So, I sleep easy at night knowing that I was sort of right, but clearly I can't. Mick, mind you, Mick did come over when he joined us, Western Australians. He said we all failed grade 3, so he was probably right in that aspect. But he never spoke to me because afterwards, when eventually, by the Wednesday he'd calmed down and all that sort of stuff, more so on the result, not so much my head count. He said, mate, why'd you call the head count? The ball's in our forward 50. I said, Fraser Gehrig's running around loose. His opponent's down next to you. It was our chance, and I think the score was 90-odd points to 35 or something. We're getting beat by 10 goals or something. So, and actually, seriously, at the time, I'm thinking, what are those coaches doing up there? Can't they see this? How come they're not calling it? Why is it, the captain having to do this, I couldn't believe it. At least I'm trying to do something, And Mick's just going, yeah, mate, well, the ball's in our forward line. We got an extra man. We're a chance to kick a goal, and you just stopped our only chance of kicking a goal. So.
I was there that night. Amazing. Incredible.
Yeah. Well, and the rule now that if you call one and you get it wrong, you lose your points. Because the rule was if you obviously found out, you lose your points. But if you call one and you prove them wrong, as I was on that night, we would have gone back to 0. Yeah. So, there's a bit of a penalty in that.
Hey, we spoke to Scotty last week about Mick Malthouse's departure from the club, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that period. But also, there was something he referenced specifically. Now, I'm looking through your career, and I don't think you were playing in the game, but I'm still intrigued. After you guys got belted by Brisbane, apparently Mick said in the change rooms, if we don't beat Collingwood next week, I'll go there, I'll coach there, I'll leave. And sort of an amazing moment in the change rooms, and Peter Matera, according to Scotty, sort of stood up and said, you shouldn't be saying some stuff like that. Do you have any recollection of that happening, and then a famous boxing session potentially that week?
I can't. I don't think I must have played that game. No, I don't think I did, Brizzy, that game, I reckon. So I can't confirm that. I'd be surprised. I remember in '96 when there was talk about him leaving, and Dwayne Buckland had come out on one of those crisp Friday mornings when we used to train, when no director or no one used to come out. It was just barely 2 trainers, the squad, and Mick. And even some of the assistants wouldn't even turn up. Anyway, '96 there was talk about him going back to Melbourne then, which now on reflection was probably him just jacking up his price, of course, to stay at West Coast, which they all do. Nothing wrong with that. Anyway, so I'd said at that time when I got out in the oval, sleepy men out of the eyes, getting ready, running around the paddock, and I saw Dwayne Buckland, our chairman, come out, and Brian Sierakowski had come out, and there was a couple of board and I thought, there must be a decision on. There must be an announcement coming. So I said to Woosher and Jacko, I said, hey, boys, I need you to laugh. I said, I'm going to do something. I just need you blokes to laugh. What are you talking about, you idiot? I said, just, look, I reckon there's an announcement going to be had. I just want you to laugh. Oh, okay, fair enough. So Mick blows his whistle. We all come in, sort of half moon. There's Mick, coaching staff, and Dwayne Buckland, our chairman, and Brian Sierakowski standing before us, which, was a rarity. And Dwayne's a very softly spoken, I think a lawyer. Anyway, softly spoken chairman. Players, I just think it's only fair. There's been a lot of discussion in the Perth media, in the AFL world around Michael Malthouse. He was about the only one that called him Michael. Michael Malthouse's career. And we just think it's only fair that you, the players, are the first to know that Michael Malthouse has agreed to sign on for another 3 years. Thinking that was going to be his announcement, I'd, as I said, worded up Woosher and Jack. I said, boys, I just need you to laugh. And I sort of pushed myself towards the end of the semicircle with a ball under my arm, thinking that was going to be the case. And I just thought to myself, how good's this going to be? So as he's put the full stop on, signed for 3 years, I've just rolled this ball out and just gone, fluff it. And there was just this deathly silence, and I'm sort of still down here. I'm waiting my left ear. I'm waiting for Jacko and Woosher to start laughing. Well, I've sort of half turned, and they're both down tying up their bootlaces. I'm thinking, you big tough no-hopers. I turned to my right, and the chairman has fallen back and Syrah's caught him just about. He's in shock. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm dead here. And I've looked at Mick. Mick's just standing there just going, laughing. And I just thought, hallelujah. At least someone got the joke, you know. Of course we were rapt and we're, you know, thankful for him staying, but I was almost a gag on poor old chairman at the time. And, it was great. I mean, great in 96, obviously, to get through to 1990, 10 years. There was certainly, obviously, with the Puller family, him going back. But, I know I didn't play that game. So I was I didn't know about that comment. So I can't confirm or deny it. But, again, his relationship with the players and what he'd done for West Coast and as you say, coached for 10 seasons and all 10 in the finals. And as they do, I mean, everyone moves on and all that sort of stuff. The list matures, and he'd gone through. When you consider it, it's sort of a modern day what Geelong have and Hawthorn. Well, even Hawthorn have now bowed out. Even probably what Geelong have done with Chris Scott, just stayed relevant, and be able to do that. And I must say, in some of those squads that made finals, I mean, you look at some of those players that played, you've got to scratch your head to say, mate, that was an amazing achievement to get that group of players into a finals campaign.
Amazing.
But I think we all. Sorry, I was just going to say, but like most sports, and Garby, I know you follow obviously a whole host of sports too around the world. I mean, you have that, and that's probably what they say, the Achilles heel of. And if you just don't get it quite right, that's what happens when you have a core group of players that go through in any sort of team of success. That's the downside of it. At some stage, it will come to an end, and even like Chicago Bulls with their great run, it comes to an end because you have that success with the great core of players. Well, while that goes on, you have those players that come and go and come and go, come and go. But eventually, when that good crew disappear, well, then those ones that come and go all of a sudden got to step up. And not all of them are going to make it. As we were, discussing with some of those boys, and you go around all the sporting leagues and all that happens, and that's the downside of a long-term or 10 or 5 to 10 years of team success. That'll happen. And even just recently, you look at the All Blacks right now. Look at them. I mean, drawing with Australia, it's almost unheard of. I couldn't believe I missed it for one. And then you watch the highlights and you go, well, as my son, he's played a bit of reunion. He said, well, the All Blacks just aren't as good as they once were. Why? Well, they had this huge core of players go through. Now, the majority have moved away. And again, I'm a Mad Wallabies man, so same thing's happened with Australia. We had this huge core of through the 80s and 90s of these Wallaby greats. Now they all go, and then all of a sudden, who's going to be the next one? And it takes a while to regenerate.
Yeah, so you had to be a captain through that. So Woosha retires. You take over as captain for a couple of years, and the team's clearly on its last legs as a group. How difficult was that to try and lead the team through that period when you're hanging on, and then eventually in 2000 you fall off the cliff?
Yeah. Now, Garby, you got Woosha on next, have you?
We'd love to.
Yeah, no, we'll get him on, mate, because he's going to have to answer this, because he had it that easy, playing alongside, those 5 other defenders. Jacko and I used to pick up his man. He used to run off and carefree down the ground, never picked up anyone, never physically tackled or bumped anyone. I mean, he had it so easy, I mean, seriously, he couldn't captain that mob. Please. Anyway, and then he throws me the keys to the car after, a wheel had fallen off, a window wiper had broken, there was no reception on the radio. I mean, please, and I had to captain. Fair dinkum. He left the place in a rabble. Look, it was certainly different. But again, those experience, thinking what it was like back at West Coast was going to be similar to my, time when I took over at Gold Coast, starting from the bottom and working up. And it probably, you probably even, having been a part of that successful era, obviously a proud person. Dean Kemp was still running around, Glenn Jakovich, Shaddy Morrison, I think, still. So we still had a reasonable tinker, Peter Matera. Yeah. But, I must say, we're all on our last legs. Let's be honest, we had 1 or 2 years left. So it's probably not ideal. We talk about West Coast before. I mean, Hearn, Kennedy at either end of the ground, it's probably not a bad thing. But if you had 2, 3 or 4 of those sort of players, that is a bad thing, because it only takes 2 or 3 of them to go down and then you're cooked, And I think that was the case, certainly 2000. We started relatively well, but Kempy went down. I played to round 7, then I basically was shot after that, and obviously played the last game when I retired. But, and Jacko, I mean, if that wasn't saying something, he'd gone from centre half back to centre half forward or full forward. So he wasn't the play he was playing. Peter Matera, probably necessity, but probably just because of age and, his ability not to be able to run like he used to do on the wing. He was playing off half back, and I think he may have even made an All-Australian, I think, that year or something, but he was close to it. But, he had a great season, but at half back, so all the good players had sort of been moved on. I think I had said Kempy was still trying to apply his trade through the midfield, but it was breaking down with soft tissue. So it was a tough year for Judgy to take over. Certainly a tough year for me as captain because we'd been so successful under Mick's watch and with such a high-end core group, if you like, to all of a sudden have that flump like the carpet taken away from you and lose all those senior players. I still remember talking to Judgy through the pre-season. I said, mate, this is... And I don't know whether it was me at my age and maybe it was my back, who knows, but I just said to him at one stage, mate, this just can't keep going. We can't keep training like this. This is ridiculous. Do you understand we travel every second week? But I think he came over because he'd been coaching Hawthorn, I think, for 5 years and done relatively well. I think he was trying to train us like a Victorian team. And I just said, mate, we can't do this. And, mate, to the point where, we in a night game, we'd train at 11 o'clock that day. So we'd play
That's crazy.
Saturday night. Yeah, Saturday night. We'd have our 3 session. We'd have a 4th session. And it wasn't like a kick and a giggle session, the captain's run, as they would call it, in the modern era. I mean, you'd sweat up. This is at 11 o'clock and we'd be playing at 7. So you drive in, train, go home, and then we do it again. But then seriously, at 7 o'clock for a game. We were just cooked. So I look back on that 2000 start of the season. I think we were 3-2. 3-1, 3-2, and then I think we may have only won 5 games, I think, or 7 games for that season. Basically, the balloon had burst.
What was it like? You were obviously struggling, as you say, with your back and various injuries. When do you have that conversation about a farewell game? And I guess the balance between you've served this club so well, won premierships, best and fairest All-Australians, captain the club. Is it almost a token gesture, or how do you weigh that up? And what was it like?
It was funny. You talk about moments. I remember Lenny Hayes walking around me. Eddie had literally walked around me and kicked a goal, and he jinked left, so I followed him left. He jinked right, and I kept going left, and I couldn't go back the other way. And at half time, I'm standing at the urinal, and it's just got that tightness all through my back. Anyway, I saw the surgeon, and look, the executive summary was the surgeon said, look, you could probably keep on playing, but you'll probably have to play like every 3rd game. When you retire, probably in 2 more years, we'll stick 2 rods up your back. You won't be able to bend over and pick up your kids, swing a golf club, play tennis, cricket, whatever. As I said, you'll be fairly straight up and down, if you know what I mean. And so I thought, as you said, Drew, after 13 years, a couple of flags, I thought, there's a bit more to life than, and the rest of my life than two metal rods up my spine. So came back from the surgeon, obviously sat down with Judgy and the club, or Judgy first, to say, mate, I don't think that news was too great. And he said, what do you say? I said, no, not good. So I went through it with them. And so at round, I think that would have been a bit earlier than I think I may have had I tried to have another game and played, and it was just terrible. I might have trained up for a game, and then as soon as we started competitive work and started bumping and tackling and stuff, it would flare up and it would just be horrendous. So it was decided I'd go on, and I think I might have been one of the first to be classified as indefinite on the injury list back in the halcyon days. And so I sat on that from round 7 to the last game, but obviously in that period, because you were captain, I had to keep myself relatively fit, so I'd run around. But just for those, 13 weeks, it was just living a lie, because I was telling everyone, I'm a chance this week, or maybe in a couple of weeks' time, excuse me, knowing full well that I wasn't. Then it was talked about, obviously, later in the year when, obviously, West Coast were well and truly out of finals. Then we played Melbourne in the last game, and, as I said, well, no chance of doing any damage to anyone or anything. So it was planned that I'd have a farewell game, which was fantastic. I said, it certainly wasn't a call for me, that's for sure. I'd happily just ride off into the sunset because you do what you do, because you love what you do, you love the club, you get paid what you paid. That's fair and reasonable. I always say that you should leave a club knowing that it doesn't owe you anything and you don't owe it anything. Because if you do, I reckon then you've got regrets. And I don't leave that club having played the way I played and how I played, knowing that I owed the club anymore, and it certainly didn't owe me anything more. So I was more than happy, but certainly grateful that I could actually thank the fans, if you like, that had seen me since 1988 to 2000 and followed my career, that I could say thanks to them in that last game.
And you kicked a goal in that final game, which was an awesome moment. I mean, we're getting pasted by Melbourne, of course, so they put you forward, and every time they went forward, they just looked for you, because we might as well get something out of this game. Let Bluey McKenna kick one in his finale, and that was an awesome moment.
Yeah, well, the lead up to that too, because I think I started down back, and Robert the Bruce, as I called him, was running around for Melbourne, and he was just running up the ground, and I was just sort of sitting in half back waiting for him. I said, mate, I'm not chasing up there. You want to come back, try and kick a goal, get past me, because I'm not following you. Anyway, that was first quarter. Second quarter, Jeff Farmer had come out playing for Melbourne, and it was a contested ball. I saw him coming, so I braced myself, and he, much littler than me, but he could get some impact, old Jeffrey Farmer, because he was built low to the ground and had some power about him, and he hit me just side on. Nothing out of the ordinary, but even as I say it now, it can still rattle up my spine, and it just took the wind out of me, and I just thought, that's why this is my last game. And I came off almost once the ball, they might have even kicked a goal, I reckon. So I waved to the bench, you've got to get me off. I have to catch my breath here. He's just got me beauty here, Jeff Farmer. And I reckon rest of that quarter, the third quarter, I reckon I still spent off. And then I came on in that last quarter, and obviously Judgy put me forward, because that's obviously about the only place I could play without being a real pain in his backside. And then Cuzzy hit me with that one coming out of the centre, but it was all funny. I still tell people this story. You talk about your product of your environment, because if I was picking a ball up at full back, it's something I'd done a lot of my career. My first thought, even before I'd even seen the game or the players behind me, I picked the ball up, and the first thought is I'm thinking, okay, who am I going to hit? Who's it, Jacko? Or is it Tommy Kemp? Or is it Peter Matera? Is it Woosha? Who am I going to hit on this kick out? I'd mark that ball, chest mark. I can guarantee, as I'm almost stepping down, I think I got this far off the ground. It was a huge, my ears popped, my nose was bleeding, I was that high off the ground. But as I landed from the chest mark, my first thought was, I'm going to push this ball right. And I just thought to myself, you talk about your mind playing games with you. There's my two different worlds of environment, or how the mind plays games on you. If this is a defensive action, I'm thinking what I can do and how I'm going to do it. Now I'm spent, 2 minutes in my career in the forward line. Now all of a sudden, my first thought is a negative one. I'm going to push this ball right. So I sort of overcorrected a little bit to make sure I'm not going to push it right. If anything, I'm going to hit the left-hand goalpost. So I aimed sort of a metre in, and sort of it went through. But it was one of as I said, 27. That was my 27th goal. Apart from that one, because we lost against Melbourne, the 26 others I always say were match winners.
It was an awesome moment and an awesome way to end just a brilliant career, Guy McKenna, and it's been great talking through it all with you here on The Nest. Thanks so much for your time. Eagles fans, young and old, no doubt, will have enjoyed this thoroughly. It's one of the great Eagles legacies, and it's great to see you speak so enthusiastically about the club, so really appreciate it.
Much appreciated, boys. Anytime.
Yes, so Guy McKenna there on The Nest. What a footballer, and what great stories. For people who didn't have the luxury of watching him play, Drewy, I would say think Brad Shepherd. And this is no knock on Brad Shepherd, because I'm like as big a Brad Shepherd fan as anyone, but think Brad Shepherd and just another level up. I mean, when you think about 3 All-Australians, 2 best and fairest, as good as Shepherd has been, I mean, that's just ridiculous. So that was the kind of player. Always, Gary Ablett he mentioned. I mean, Shep plays on Degoe and Robbie Gray, these sorts of forwards. That's who Bluey got every week, and was just amazing. And then just so clean with his disposal off half-back, and a legend, and great to have him on.
Would have been hard being a defender at that time in the 90s when, if the best forwards are kicking 120, 130 goals, and there's still a lot, like the second and third bananas were probably absolute jets as well. But interesting to him talking about how he used to play off his man and run off. There's something to that in modern footy. It almost sounds like he would have been really well suited to the way the game's played now. But giving of his time and, his football acumen is so high, we know, because he's gone on to be a coach and be involved at high level in multiple sports now. So great to hear from him, and part of the club's most successful era as well. So he's got a lot to give. But Garby, we've still got a bit to get through. And just one thing on the weekend of footy, just one final kick in the guts for me on Saturday night, watching Collingwood get absolutely torn apart by Geelong. They gave everything. They played their best performance of the season against West Coast to get through by a point, and then they get ripped apart. I mean, we would have given the Cats a run for their money at least. It reminded me again of how frustrating that was.
Yeah, I think we would have given them a run for their money, no doubt. Whether we would have won or not, I'm not too sure. But yeah, I mean, they just spent all their petrol tickets mentally against us, clearly. I mean, they're a good team, Collingwood, on their day, as we saw, but I mean, they didn't fire a shot. So I don't know. I don't see it as a kick in the guts. For me, it's like, the team that knocked us off. And, I've got a meme saved in my phone that Collingwood deleted after the game. They yelled, "Not a single person backed us in capitals, ha, 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 ha," which they deleted off their club Twitter page. I've got that in my phone because, we're laughing at you now. So, yeah, I get certainly the kick in the guts point from you, but I don't know, maybe I got some solace in it that they're now eliminated, and the reminder and the memory of what they did to us is gone from this final series.
Yeah, I sent that tweet, the deleted tweet, out to a number of people on Saturday night. It's been like, how's this club? We're 1 from 4, and it's 80-7 the next week in the third quarter. Anyway. And
all the memes of, showing Liam Ryan the ball, they've all disappeared very quickly now as well, haven't they? So, yeah, thank you very much. But, yeah, we do move on, and when we talk about the future and what might transpire. There's been some talk about the Eagles' captaincy in the next few years, which is an interesting discussion point we'll get onto in a moment. But obviously trade talk is pretty prominent right now. Zac Langdon linked to the club. Drewy, GWS small forward, WA boy, wants to come home. Eagles apparently interested. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so reports that he has nominated the Eagles as his preferred club, which I think when you look at the list profile with West Coast and Freo, it probably makes sense. There's a lot of medium-small Freo forwards that they've got on their list. So the question is, with Langdon, we know that he's a bit of a pocket rocket. Was he a slightly mature-aged recruit? I think that GWS picked up. He's not an A grader by any stretch, but he looks like he's got a bit of attitude about him. He's a sandpapery type, pressure forward, which would fit in with what we would probably need. So he's an upgrade on, a Nick Reid or what others we've got on our list. The question is he worth paying the extra salary to? And giving up a draft pick? That's the question. What do you think?
If you get him for a fourth rounder, which is probably what he's worth, I don't see why not. It adds a bit of depth to our forward line. Look, I'll be honest, I don't think Nick Reid, it's very hard to cast judgment on players after 1 or 2 games because it's such a big step up. But he is a mature age player, so you do look at him with a different lens. I probably looked at him and went, great that he had a chance. His first game was good. Then that game against Richmond, you went, he just might not be up to AFL standard. Great story, but it's a big jump from where he was playing. If you're talking a trade-off in that regard, Zac Langdon for Nick Reid, we've got better depth at the club. So if you get that for a fourth rounder, I don't have an issue with it. It seems like a smart move. Zac Langdon's not going to get you super excited based on what he's done so far, but maybe in the Eagles environment, he does become a handy pressure forward.
Yeah, the question is how many prospects in that position can you fit onto a list if it's going to be reduced? Like we've got Jermaine Jones, let's say, Jermaine Jones and Langdon and Rioli not playing. Are they all going to be on the list at the same time? So that's the juggling act that Craig Vozzo and Darren Glass have got at the moment, isn't it? Is to try and work out where do we prioritise building depth at the club. Maybe they look at the draft this year and think, well, we don't have any high picks and we're not guaranteed to get anything out of this because we haven't seen these kids play. Do we kind of just throw this year's draft away a little bit and try and get depth in? So it's an interesting one, but if he can help our footy club, then we'll welcome him with open arms.
I still think we'll trade up somewhere. Like, I think a player will go for picks or someone else somewhere along the line. I can see the Eagles making one or two moves come trade time, either to build up a few more youngsters or to get, an established player in their prime. Not necessarily a superstar, but just someone who can help the team along a little bit. I do see that happening. But another question from Candice, who's, a great fan of the Nest early on. The Patrick Cripps rumours. So there's a bit of talk going around that he wants to come home. Freo linked more strongly than us with him. I can't see it happening, firstly. And secondly, I just don't see any way that the Eagles can afford him, A, B, make a move for him, and C, even need him considering the players we have in our list.
Yeah, interesting discussion point. Thinking about Paddy Cripps at West Coast, that gets you excited though, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
So the way that it would put our list manager hats on, Garby, the way that it could work is if Hearn and Kennedy retire at the end of next season, which we think they will, can we talk numbers here? Like, can we estimate how much money that frees up? Like, is it 700 grand maybe? Like, I really don't know. People ask me what players get paid all the time, and I would not have the faintest idea of what they're on. We can only guess.
But the contracts are also now, like, you don't know if they're back-ended, front-ended. You can't pick. You don't know what they got paid in their first 5 years compared to what they get paid now.
But so there's no back-ending with one-year contracts. So it's like if Kennedy and Hearn retire, then that's going to free up some money. That's not enough to get Cripps. So if he wants to come to West Coast, if that's on his radar, it's not going to be for money. It's going to be to come home and to be part of a club that's consistently competing. So the roadmap to getting Paddy Cripps is that Carlton have to have another poor year. And they're being pretty aggressive with their recruiting. So we don't know if that's actually going to happen. But it's we'd have to make a couple of decisions as well. There'd have to be some potentially first choice players, which would need to probably make way. But you have to have the conversation. Like, you've got to speak to him and say, you're a restricted free agent at the end of next season. Does a move home to WA, do you like that? Maybe the captaincy gets dangled in front of him to take over after Shuey, or, who knows? The question is, Shuey, Cripps, Kelly, Gaff, Sheed, I don't know if I'm missing anyone, Yo as a midfield, that's a pretty enticing prospect. So, yeah, it doesn't seem likely, but it's a conversation that West Coast have to have.
Sure. We've already got so many of those players, but a couple of them are getting towards the end of their career. He's 25. The issue I have with Cripps is I think he got battered so heavily when Carlton were rubbish. I worry about his body. Like, I see the Daniel Kerr's kicking in a bit where he went so hard for the first 7 years of his career. I think he's going to struggle to play regular games in the back end. I think he misses a fair bit of footy. Maybe moves forward a bit. I don't see him being the same player as we've seen in the first 7 years. You can already see some issues with his body starting to creep in. So I worry about that as well. So I don't see the need for us to go for it, but maybe in a season or so it does happen.
The thing is that we're not giving up draft capital to get him. So that's where it's like you can have a big swing in him, and you can. Well, my assumption would be that the list management and talent group right now, they'd almost be drawing up a salary cap list scenario just for Cripps. It's like, what do we have to do? And that, and he's worth going through that planning process. So, it's a fun one to talk about, a lot to play out. But you can imagine next season, if he remains unsigned, it's going to be a discussion point for a lot of the season.
Yeah, I think he sort of stays at Carlton, and they're probably going to be on the way up, and they offer him stupid money just to be the captain and lead that team through some finals series. So I can't see it happening, but yeah, it's certainly an interesting one to discuss, as is the Eagles' captaincy moving forward. And this is a pertinent discussion because Luke Shuey's 30, so he's got another couple of years, you would think. But then who's the next one to take the Eagles forward? This became a discussion point on Melbourne radio and SEN. Recently, Tim Gossage was asked about it, and he put forward what sounds like a left field option, and that is Oscar Allen guaranteed next captain of the Eagles after Luke Shuey. which I found really interesting. And if you look through the Eagles list, you can see why that's likely. I mean, Nick Natanui's 30 as well. Andrew Gaff's 30 as well. Elliot Yeo's a good option, but he's 28. So is Jeremy McGovern. So I think Yeo and McGovern would be the next candidates when, say, in 2 years' time, when Luke Shuey says, all right, it's time to pass it on to someone else. But then they're 30 already. So do you keep going through these 2-year cycles of captaincy, or do you say to Oscar Allen, who's 22, 23, a star forward, well-spoken, mature, all right, it's yours now for 7, 8 years? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I'm fully on board. As soon as Oscar Allen, the bouncing ball in the goal square against Adelaide, when he flicked it over someone's head and kicked a goal and helped win us that game, I've been on board his train since then. I think he's a sensational talent, and you don't see many players of over 190 centimetres settle into AFL life so easily and so quickly. And it looks like he's got all the tools. He's got the boyish good looks, Garby, the blonde hair, which we wish we could pull off. And yeah, I think that would be a great move to have someone. You could lock him in as captain maybe for 8 years. You know, he could lead the football club into that next era. You know, wherever that takes us. I think he would be a superb choice. The other one you didn't mention is Shepherd. I don't know how old Brad Shepherd.
Similar type. Yeah, so similar. He's also 30 already, so I just think he misses it age-wise, unfortunately. It's interesting. I think Oscar Allen, I mean, look, the career trajectory looks fine, and if he carries on playing the way he has been, then it makes sense. But he has to really keep that going, because you don't want to put the captaincy on someone who's not a star player yet when they're only 23. Like if you're McGovern or Yeo, if Oscar Allen becomes a star forward in the comp, which it looks like he can, then you accept it and you go, right, well, he's that good, so much respect for him, and he can be the captain for 8 years. But if he doesn't take that massive jump up as we expect him to do, if you're McGovern and Yeo, you go, well, this guy can't be captain. You know, look what I've done. I'm only 30. I deserve it for a couple of years over this kid. So I think a lot of it depends on how Oscar Allen goes in the next 2 years.
Yeah, there's a hierarchy in terms of talent and experience, and that needs to be respected. And so it may depend on where we're at. If we're challenging for the cup, then maybe installing a 23-year-old as captain isn't the right move. Maybe you just hand it over to another one of the boys who's kind of been there and done that. So yeah, it's fun to debate. Again, it's Shuey's. We expect Luke to have a bounce back year next year, and if he can make sure the soft tissue injuries don't bite again, he's a sensational person to be leading our club. Just on the list management stuff, Garby, I think you might enjoy this one, so I'll put it to you. Someone's reached out to me to suggest the idea of, can we get Jordan Clark out of Geelong? So Perth boy, a lot of talent. I think he was a first-round draft pick, I'm pretty sure, around the 15 to 18 mark.
Yeah, he was early.
Speedy winger, which is what you've put it out there into the world. You said that's what we need. Now Clark is very versatile. I think he's almost played across all 3 lines for Geelong in his short career so far. Injury interrupted this season, but he burst onto the scene last year. Could we get it done? Is it something we should be looking at, do you think?
I think we should be, yeah. I really like it. I think he's a really good talent. And he's rated highly at the Cats, and for some reason just couldn't get in the team in the first part of the year. They weren't happy with some of his defensive skills and so on. And they put him in and he was fantastic. Can't remember who it was against. I know because I got him in my fantasy team and he was racking up points. And I went, I've held you all year and now you're finally delivering. And then he did his shoulder in that exact game. So I was gutted. But you could see the talent that's there, and you saw it last season as well. So I think he's definitely someone that we should look at for 2 reasons. A, he can be the next generation through when Shuey and Gaff and Yeo move on. But in the meantime, you can say to him, look, I know you're probably an on-baller, but we need you to play on a wing. We just have a vacancy there. Turn yourself into a wingman for 2-3 seasons, who goes into the middle as well. You still have to have those attributes. And then later on, you're a real leader in the engine room on the ball. And if you're Jordan Clark, you'd be like, yeah, right, fine, I can play that role and come back home and play for a team that would challenge for a couple of years if it's not working out for whatever reason at Geelong. So I think we definitely should. And then the other angle on that is that almost a Jared Brander, not straight swap, but a deal to Geelong with Brander in some way, shape or form?
Yeah, and I kind of wish that Clark didn't play for Geelong because it just, for whatever reason, it feels like we've already taken Kelly. Maybe it's going to be a little harder to go in and prize out their next good young player. But Brander, he would really fit in that Geelong forward line perfectly with Hawkins right now because they don't want to play the two key talls. They can straight away plug Brander in. If they're going to lose Taylor and probably Henderson soon, he could also play a tall down back. So it's hard to get into the West Coast team in those key pillar positions, even as the second or third banana, whereas there's plenty of other clubs where you can make a case for that. So maybe someone like a Hawthorn might be interested in a Brander, and then they can send their first rounder on to Geelong. I'm sure there's ways you can make it work, but the Clark and Brander on paper seems to make a little bit of sense. But we probably have to add a little bit of mayo to it, given that Brander's unproven at the level. He was just operating off talent. But that was just one to throw at you because. There's no doubt the Eagles will be looking at, if we can't go to the draft this year and bring in guaranteed young prospects, can we look at other clubs and take theirs? Can we bring in a couple of 20-year-olds who we think are going to be good young players? So another one, Garby, I'll put to you. A listener reached out and said, who's our best young prospect right now at the club? I think this was off the back of, Gary Lyon, he nominated Ainsworth as our best young player.
Interesting. Ainsworth's up there. So how young do you go? We spoke about this last week or a couple of weeks ago, and I said I really like Bailey Williams. I think he's got something about him. So he's certainly right up there. I like Xavier O'Neill as well. He was a player that I thought has a bit of talent. So they were the two that probably stand out for me, but there's definitely a bit of a void there, Drewy. I would go O'Neill and Bailey Williams right now.
Yeah, I think we haven't seen a lot of our kids. That's the thing. So they've only played a handful of games. So I think that Williams might be the standout in terms of ceiling talent. It looks like Ainsworth and O'Neill are going to be able to come in and be solid role players at the club. But can we nominate Oscar Allen still? Does he still count?
Probably. Look, Jared Cameron's really exciting. I think if he realises his potential up forward, then we've got a real live wire that we want. The disappointing thing, and we haven't touched on it at all, when we talk about early draft picks and young players coming through, and we speak about Willie Rioli a lot, what about Daniel Venables? He's an early draft pick and a premiership player who's had his career taken away from him because of concussion. Like, he's a player that could have played that half-forward role, that crumbing role, that pressure-forward role, and can't get on the field because of head knocks, and his career might be over, which is devastating. I mean, he was good enough for Adam Simpson to say, you're playing in this grand final against Collingwood.
Yeah, I wrote about this on the Patreon the other day, Garby, when talking about the list and where we're at. And I spoke to someone, a player manager, a while ago, in relation to concussion and I guess the situation that players are in right now and how they're trying to protect themselves. But he actually brought up Venables as an example of someone who's probably going to lose 8 years of their career because of this injury. I think we don't talk about it a lot, and we saw that he went into the hub with West Coast during the season, and Adam Simpson spoke about the boost that it gave the playing group. But I've got to be honest, from what I've been hearing, I don't know what you've heard, it doesn't sound like he's going to be able to get back. I think he's out of contract, I think, so he may have to retire.
I mean, that's horrible, right? So that's an early draft pick that we just lose. And we haven't had a luxury of them lately because of our ladder position and our trading. So, I mean, that's a big, big blow. So, and it's in a vacancy, an area of the field that we have issues in. So that's a devastating one. And I think he could have been a real talent. So that's a story for another time, I think, for us to really sink our teeth into and maybe get Daniel Venables on at some stage to speak about it. But I'd say at this stage, O'Neill and Williams are the two for me. And Jake Waterman, I think, is still a young player, and I think he's going to be a crucial player for us as that half-forward, wingman, third tall kind of player. I love what he brought this season. New contract for him as well. So Jakey Waterman's probably the one that I would pick. I think he still fits the criteria.
Yeah, and great news on Waterman. We haven't touched on it, but he signed a 3-year contract. He was the one that really stood out on our list of uncontracted players. So he'll get a nice little pay rise. And again, I wrote about this the other day. He reminds me a bit of Jack Gunston. I reckon his versatility, which Gunston has only developed later in his career, as Hawthorn have kind of needed him to plug it. They've almost had to plug Gunston in to fill holes. But Waterman was playing probably so well that Adam Simpson was like, where can we put him? So he was playing on the wing a little bit. We saw him drift back and take intercept marks against Collingwood even. So he's a real talent for us, and he'll become a really important player when the spots open up for him to play a lead role.
Hey, haven't times changed? Because I think the Eagles are on their Mad Monday yesterday, on a Sunday. So I saw some Instagram, I'm sure Eagles fans have, of the boys out and about having a drink, as they should, as every club does and has done forever and a day. Haven't we changed from the mid-2000s era when we had the glamour boys of Cousins and Judd and Kerr and these guys? They're all hipsters now. Or is that now the new glamour? Like, speaking of Jake Waterman, him with Tom Cole and Dom Shee, they all wear these hipster hats, and I'm a little bit older than you. So for me, it seems like that's sort of left of centre and not the cool way anymore. But maybe that is the new cool. I don't know. Are we now a new hipster playing group compared to how we were in the 2000s when we were super cool?
Well, there's definitely a divide between those guys who are all really close, and then you've got the older guys with kids, the Shueys, McGovens, Reddens, all that. They're all close with their kids. They probably dress how we do. And then you've got, Tom Barassa is surely the leader of that crew. Wearing the weirdly shaped sunnies and that weird flat hat.
Yes.
That's like, but it's not a flat peak, but it's, I don't even know how to describe it. But yeah, absolutely. That's right in their hitting zone at the moment, hanging out sort of in Claremont, sort of Subiaco around there. Couple more names for you, Garby. I'll just throw at you in terms of West Australians we could have a crack at, submitted by one of our listeners. Narkle, one from Geelong as well. Will Powell, who plays for the Gold Coast Suns, who moved to defence late in the season, was playing decent footy. And then Cam Zurhaar, he's thrown out as well, from North Melbourne, who I think would be hard to prize out of North at the moment, and not sure there's actually a spot for him in our forward line necessarily. Petrevski-Seton is another one, which I don't mind the Petrevski-Seton one, because can he play on the wing, or is he an inside mid? I think when he first got drafted, they played him inside and he looked good. And halfback has not worked for Petrevski-Seton. But if he came to West Coast, he'd be coming as a midfielder.
That's interesting. I mean, as a halfback, we don't need him. We've got 37 halfbacks already, and they're all pretty good. So a hard no to him as a halfback. But if they view him as a midfielder, yes. But what do we have to give up for him? Because, he's well established now and he's in the Carlton side and they like him. Zurhaar, no, just because we'd have to give up too much, and I don't think we desperately need him. We've got enough half-forward options, and he's got talent, but he hasn't, killed it yet. So, no. Will Powell and Narkle, yeah. I mean, if you can get them, they're young, talented players. Will Powell, certainly. Narkle hasn't made it at Geelong, but you can see there's something there. Has he got the engine to play on a wing? I'm not sure. Do we need him if he can only play forward? That would probably be the question mark. I don't think we need him if he can only play forward, because we have Jared Cameron coming through, and Petruccelli, and so on and so forth. But if he can play wing, then yeah, he's the other option. But Jordan Clark's the one that really stands out for mine. And Will Powell can play from Gold Coast. So yeah, I mean, yes, we've got a lot of half-backs, but maybe that means Duggan just goes midfield full-time.
I think Powell played on the wing a bit for the Suns before they shifted him back. And, I mean, there's part of that half-back intercept role that actually flows into the wing role. Like, if you can read the ball and float into those spaces and become that extra defender like McKenna talked about, then maybe Powell would be suitable. I don't think Narkle plays on the wing. I think he's an inside mid. Like, he's not big, but I think he's a pretty tough sort of inside operator. So if you brought that to the club, it's the reason that you're doing it is to give us depth. It's not to bring him to the team and play him out of position. Like, we've been down that road.
Yeah, but we also need to bring a next generation through. Like, you look at the list right now and you say we've got 2 more years, and then you start to get scared because we could really fall away. The club's really good at regenerating and identifying that and preparing for that. They always have been. So, you're comforted by that, but at the same time, you're going to go, well, at least a couple of years out the finals, because there's just no way. There's just a massive age gap in the list, right? So they got to prepare for that. And also, you don't know what recruiters see in a player and don't see in a player. Like, they might have rated Narkle really highly, the Eagles, and weren't able to get him. So, let's make a move for him now, so to speak, right? That could be the way they operate. Maybe that's the same with Will Powell. And so, we're willing to give something up because we had this guy high up in our list when they were drafted. We just didn't have the picks at that time. So you just don't know what the recruiter's telling the coaching staff in terms of making moves as a result of that. So I think we will be active. I'm not trading the farm, but I think we'll make a couple of moves come trade period. I think there's reason for Eagles fans to be excited about that. To prepare for a tilt at the flag, and also, to get ready for when our blokes move on.
Yeah, so I guess for fans who are wondering, the trade period pretty much starts almost the day after the Melbourne Cup. So that's November 3 or 4, around then. So up until then, it'll be posturing and rumour. But, it'll be a fascinating time of year, that's for sure. Garby, you got anything else for us?
No, I think that'll do us a good 2 hours, mate. 2 hours of talking Eagles and talking about Guy McKenna's career. That'll do me for a Monday morning. Absolutely fantastic. So thank you to all for listening. Keep giving us your feedback on Twitter and Facebook. The Patreon's going on well. Drewy, you're pumping out some good stuff, and please go and visit that page and get behind it.
Thanks, Garby. We're working hard at the Nest to bring you everything West Coast. So enjoy the pod, enjoy the chat with Guy McKenna. If you haven't already, Scott Cummings, Andrew Embley, the first couple of guests, catch up on that. Plenty of time on our hands with the Eagles out of the finals. So keep listening, rate, review, subscribe, and get involved on the Nest.
Good work, Drewy. Good work, Eagles fans. Thanks so much for joining us.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.